Oh, hello. Today we're going to talk about the Kill Team Desert Warfare rules from White Dwarf 501. And we're going to pose the question, who are these actually for? So, Desert Warfare. Hot, arid, and hostile to life, there are countless deserts scattered throughout the Imperium. Across their barren surfaces, silica dunes stretch as far as the eye can see. While parched mesas sit beneath cloudless skies, the land baked harder than ferrocrete by unforgiving suns. Though often found on death worlds, deserts are barely habitable, but natural resources, strategic importance, and many other factors mean they are often become contested war zones. Kill teams sent on a mission to such an environment are unfortunate indeed. Interesting. It's the start of what promises to be a sweltering summer, which means, in White Dwarf production terms, this article is being written in the middle of a very wet winter. Can you blame us for dreaming up something a little warmer? Desert Warfare is a wargaming classic too. Windswept dunes, half-buried settlements, freak weather occurrences, and deadly creatures that appear out of nowhere. What's not to love about fighting in a harsh, uncompromising desert environment? Actually, now you come to mention it, it sounds awful, but somebody's got to do it. Introducing desert cards. To recreate these deadly desert missions, we've created a set of 6 cards for you to use in your Kill Team games. We've introduced such classics as Shifting Sands, Scouring Winds, Ambush Predators, and Exploding Cakes. That's Desert Warfare, guys, editor. It doesn't matter how safe you think your operatives are, the sands will claim them. Opposite, you'll find rules for using these cards, plus suggestions for other ways to use them. Perhaps you could try them out in a pickup game at your next club night, or incorporate them into a campaign or league. Watch out for those traps. Okay, so this is the preamble to the Desert Warfare article. Because whilst it's 2 pages in White Dwarf, basically 1 page is just preamble. So let's look at the actual rules. Desert cards. Desert cards contain additional rules that can be used to add unexpected twists to your games of Kill Team, whether in a one-off game or a league. One deck contains 6 desert cards. Before the start of the game, shuffle the deck and roll off. The winner gets to randomly draw 1 desert card or roll on the chart below, which will then be in effect for the duration of the game. The rules drawn on the card affect both players. Here are a few other ways you can use your desert cards. Combine them with the Deception cards presented in White Dwarf 492 for total battlefield carnage. Each player draws a desert card, and the results of both apply. Each player draws a desert card, but does not reveal it until they decide they want to. This could mean, for example, they avoid the predations of a sand tiger, but then they play the card at a crucial moment on their opponent. Once it's been played, both players are affected as per the rules on the card. If you're taking part in a campaign, each week or round of gaming will be represented by a particular effect, so that everyone faces the same threat. In narrative gaming, perhaps one player's kill team is better suited to the desert than their opponents. It could be that Space Marines are assaulting a Necron tomb world, but only the Space Marines are affected by the effects on the desert card. Instead of drawing a desert card at the start of the game when an objective marker is claimed, you could roll to see if one of them comes into play. For example, on a roll of 5 or more, a desert card is drawn from the deck and put into play. These are countless ways you can use your new desert cards in games of Kill Team. If you come up with a fun way to use them, write in and let us know. So, that's a lot of text to basically say it's the Blood Bowl weather table. Like, it is this standard thing now that Games Workshop is putting into more and more of its games, where you have a random effect that applies at the start of the game to the whole game. And then they got some bump about other ways you could use them, but it's just, here's a random effect, it's going to affect your game and change it up. Now, this sort of thing has become a core part of 40k, right? So if you're familiar with the Leviathan mission deck, that has the same thing where you draw a random card, and it has a rule that affects the game. Now, famously, in the Leviathan deck, there was a card called Chilling Rain, which meant that there were no extra effects in the game. In the Pariah Nexus deck, which is coming out next week, which is like the next season of 40k, right, they've got rid of that Chilling Rain so that every game of 40k that's using this deck will always have some kind of, I'm going to call it weather, some kind of weather type modifier, right? So this is an attempt to add weather type modifiers to Kill Team. it's clearly something Games Workshop is experimenting with, right? And we'll talk more. I'll talk now, right? So there's this idea that you add in these extra random rules to disrupt competitive play, right? To make the game have that little bit more fun, to make it so that potentially a player who's less well practiced has more of a chance. It kind of it's an element that I think is there to, in some levels, to erode the advantage of practice, right? And on another level, it's to give you another domain in which you have to excel. You have to be able to adapt to the circumstances of the random weather, effectively, that's layered on top of all the other variables in the game, so the maps and the missions and things like that. Let's have a little look at the actual cards, and then we'll discuss where we think this is. So I appreciate this is really small and quite difficult to read on the screen, if you've not made it full screen especially. So each card has a load of fluff basically on the left hand side. I'm just for the sake of keeping everything straight in our minds, I'm not going to read all of the fluff on the left hand side, all of the background that explains what's going on. So if you roll a 1 or you draw the Scouring Winds card, okay, it says at the end of each firefight phase, players must roll a d6 for each operative that's not within an inch of a piece of terrain. On a 3-up, they suffer a mortal wound. Okay. You've got number 2 is Sand Tiger Attack. At the start of each firefight phase, the player with initiative rolls a d6. The Sand Tiger attacks at the start of that activation or at the start of the last activation of the turning point, whichever comes first. For example, if the result is a 2, the second operative to activate... Oh, I see, yeah. The second operative to activate during the turning point is attacked. At the start of the attacked operative's activation, roll a d6. On a 1 to 2, it does nothing. On a 3+, the target operative and any other operatives in engagement range suffer d3 plus 2 mortal wounds and -1 APL. Number 3, Shifting Sands. Any operatives on the kill zone floor can risk moving over 5 inches in a single activation, but they must roll 1d6 if they do. On a 5 or 6, they continue their activation as normal. On a 1 to 4, the operative can continue their activation, but will have -1 APL at the end of their activation. Number 4, Lightning Storm. At the start of each firefight phase, the player with initiative rolls 1d6. On a 1 to 2, it has no effect. This turning point on a 3 to 6 worsen the ballistic skill of all ranged weapons by 1 when shooting a valid target over red. Number 5 is Sandpit, which is kind of funny to me, but there you go. Sandpit. All operatives can perform the following action. Burrow for 1 AP. The operative can gain or remove a burrow token. They cannot do so while within engagement range of an enemy operative. Operatives that have a burrow token can only perform the charge and burrow actions and are obscured while more than a circle away from enemy operatives. After an operative's perform the charge action, their burrow token is removed. They can still be charged and affected by the Blast and Torrent special rules. And number 6, Atmospheric Interference. At the start of each strategy play phase, the player with the initiative rolls 1d6. On a 1 to 2, this rule has no effect. On a 3 to 5, all ploys cost 1 CP more than they used to play. And on a 6, all strategic ploys and all tactical ploys cost 1 CP more than they used to play. This resets each turning point. So you're basically rolling a dice, and you're getting one of 6 buffs, debuffs, I should say, for everybody for the game. I will say that if you buy the White Dwarf 501, you do get 6 physical cards, so you can shuffle these out and deal them. Although, if you're just generating 1, do you really need the cards? I don't know. I don't understand these rules. I don't understand who they are for. Now, this is the latest in a small series of small supplemental rules in White Dwarf over the last couple of years. So we've had Sentries, we've had Jungle Terrain, and we've had the Deception cards. None of them are used to play standard games of Kill Team. On some level, I get it. These are narrative rules for narrative gamers, and maybe I'm not a narrative gamer. I just don't get what this narrative gaming thing is, which sounds bizarre. I'll try and explain it as best I can. So I'm not actually a a try-hard elite tournament grinder. I'm not somebody who practices every, like, 3 times a week and like does things like set up and practice deployment and do things like that. And I don't play in every tournament going. I enjoy attending tournaments, don't get me wrong, right? And I talk about tournaments quite often on the channel because I think casual players should go to tournaments. I think tournaments are great places to go just to play more games of Kill Team and meet like-minded people. I think you could probably characterise my preferred style of play as casual matched play, right? I want to play by the match play parameters, but I don't want to take it super seriously, and I don't want to insist on like interpretations of the rule that are technically correct but make no sense, right? I want to try and play a fun experience that's grounded in like the designer's intention for the game as far as possible. Yeah, but I generally want to play by the match play rules. Okay. I think there's this false dichotomy, right, in discussion around games where people say, like, you're either narrative or you're competitive, and it's set up as this thing where narrative is the beer and pretzels, it's fun, and competitive is like the try hard and the sweaty, and that's you're either in one of these two camps, you're narrative or competitive. And I think that's really a false dichotomy. I personally don't understand how the game can be more casual if you're layering on more rules, right? Because it's just I understand the concept that if you have people who are extremely good at Kill Team and you want to have a game that is fun and engaging, and we're not at a tournament, so we don't really care who wins, and we're trying to do something to disrupt the skills gap, right? You're trying to make it so that two players in the same gaming group, one of those players is just better at Kill Team than the other, and Kill Team is a very, like at its core, it's a very skill will win you games of Kill Team. It's not that susceptible to just random variants, unlike I would argue 40k where there's a little bit more of a chance, I think, for a less skilled player to do well because of the dice. But I don't know. I think it fails. I get that that's what you could be trying to do, but I think it fails at that aim. I mean, to an extent, if we just go back and look at the table, like if you get, the one about, let's say number 4 Lightning Storm, so oldie 6, on a 1-2 it does nothing, on a 4-6 worse than its skill of ranged weapons by 1 when shooting a valid target over red. Well, that's just, I mean, if you're playing Felgor Ravagers, happy days, right? If you're playing, Howling Banshees, not Howling Banshees, I meant to say, Harlequin Troop, happy days. Like, there's a lot of teams where, you've just buffed the team that doesn't really have shooting over red anyway, cool. So if you've got a team that's primarily a close combat team, Mandrake's happy days. If you've got a team that's primarily a close combat team with very little range shooting, Night Lords, happy days. Like, you've just handed them a massive buff. And if you had your more skilled player that was operating one of those teams and you rolled this result, you've just made the game even more punishing for the less skilled player, right? I also don't think these rules, like, I'm sure I read the flavor text, I can understand what they're going for. I'm not sure these rules are by themselves particularly evocative of a desert, right? They're pretty generic rules that could easily be reskinned to be fighting on an ice world, anything like that, right? Like, just rename Sand Tiger Attack to Polar Bear Attack, right? Rename Scouring Winds to, Frozen Winds, Shifting Sands can be renamed to, like, Shifting Ice, right? It's like, there's nothing in the crunch of the rules that really appropriately evokes I think if you're a narrative player, surely, like, if you're playing narrative anyway, so it's not about testing to see who's best at the game, and you want to have extra rules to make the game more, to center the story in your gameplay experience. At that point, do you need Games Workshop to write those rules for you? right? Like, can't you just agree with your opponent? Like, oh, let's try this. You know, oh, if you, and then you can do things that are designed. So I'm really yawning today. I'm going to push through it. Then you can do things that are designed with your personal terrain in mind. Like, oh, if you say stationary on the ice for more than 2 turns, you fall into the frozen lake and take like these 3 mortal wounds every turn so you can climb out, or whatever you want to do. But you can make it more interesting because you can actually theme it around the terrain and the things and the environments that you're playing on, rather than just trying to have these, I don't know, like 6 pretty generic debuffs that don't really do a good job of equalizing the skill. Like, some of them, okay, maybe I picked out the one that does the worst job of equalizing the skills gap, but if that's the intent, like, don't even do that particularly well. I don't know, I struggle to get interested in them. I struggle to get interested in them, and I'm sure I will get comments saying, no, these are amazing. You just don't like them because you're a try-hard tournament. I'm really not a try-hard tournament man. I just, like, for my money, it's just one more thing to figure. How many times are you playing on, Morok? Is it Morok? I mean, the one with the smokestacks, right? And then you've just forgotten that not so much the smoke, because that's important, but like the toxic fog. How many times have you got into like the middle of turn 2 and been like, oh yeah, no, we should have been doing the toxic fog. Oh well, do you want to forget it now? Yeah, I want to forget it now, right? Like, people, generally speaking, don't want these extra kind of little, or in my experience, don't want these extra kind of little terrain rules. Yeah, I think that's my entire rant for today. I just don't quite get it. And it's not, again, it's not that I think that, look, like, oh no, it has to be a supreme test of skill and generalship, because, everybody knows I would fail that test. I just don't know or understand what layering this stuff over the top is really getting to you. Now, I don't want, I know there's somebody in the comments going to say, yeah, why are they giving us this? I want more teams. Like, it's not a choice of this or another team. I don't think they're going to give us more teams in White Dwarf because we've got like 50 teams. We don't, in inverted commas, need. I know the Tyranny players would like a team, the Death God players would like a team, and so on. But for the game health, we don't necessarily need extra teams injecting at the moment, right? But anyway, let me know in the comments. I'm sure that there's people are going to have some robust points of view, right? Do you like these? Do you plan to use them? Can you have a go at pitching them to me in the comments as something I might want to use? Now, don't get me wrong, I do think it's a really good thing that we get something in White Dwarf, just because it makes the game more visible, and it gives us hope that Games Workshop are going to continue to support the game moving forwards, right? Which is all really positive, even if the rules aren't for me, right? But these rules, I mean, the most interesting thing about this entire article was this picture. I think this is really nice artwork that they've got, like, not artwork, but like a little diorama piece, where they've got like some of the there's a little bit of Kill Team Octarius there on the right hand side, but then we've got a bit of a Bastion. We've got that weird little distressed container that's probably been physically melted with a heat gun. It's just interesting to me. Anyway, thank you to all my members, but especially Nightfall and Massive Crit, who subscribed at the highest tier. It really means a lot for people who actually want to become members and pay me some money every month. It's flabbergasting. But even everyone who just subscribes, the more subscribers that I get, the more likely it is that one day Games Workshop will notice me and send me some preview stuff, and that would be amazing, wouldn't it? Alright guys, thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you again, on Wednesday for the live stream. Cheery bye. Bye-bye. Bye.